Hey there, my friends. It's the first week of May 2026. That means it's time for the monthly Cape Coral real estate market update video. I do one of these every single month on this channel, and I'm doing things a little bit different this month. Instead of giving you the entire report in one big hour-and-a-half long video with all the different categories and statistics, I've broken this report up this month down to a few different videos. Broken them up into 3 videos actually. And so in today's video, on this video, I'm going to be covering the non-waterfront single family homes and the condos. And then I've got some other videos. One's going to have the entire 1,000-foot view of the overall Cape Coral residential real estate market. And then a third video is going to have the waterfront category. So talking about Gulf access homes and freshwater canal and lake homes. So I've got links to those other videos down there, or you can go to my channel and check those out. But all 3 of these videos will still have the general advice for current buyers in the Cape Coral real estate market, as well as some advice for current sellers in the Cape Coral real estate market. And then we'll wrap up all of these videos with an overall summary. So the video chapters are down there at the bottom if you'd like to skip ahead to any of these sections. But with all that out of the way, let's jump right in. We're going to be looking at the statistics that just came in from April, and we'll kind of compare those to the last couple of years and figure out where we are as a real estate market right now, as well as where we're heading. So we've had some exciting numbers come in. Let's get right into it and start off with the biggest category of properties that we have here in the city of Cape Coral, and that's non-waterfront single family homes. Let's jump right in. All right, so let's start off with non-waterfront single-family homes. This is by far the largest category that we have in the city of Cape Coral. We have a very large city, and most of those properties are not on the water, and they are single-family homes. So let's dive into the numbers. Let's start off with the total number of sales for this past month. Here's the chart of the monthly number of sales going back to January 2024. We had a pretty strong month for this category last month in April, as we really always do this time of year. You know, March, April, and May are the 3 biggest months that we have in the broader residential real estate market here in the city of Cape Coral. And so last month was pretty strong. We had 354 non-waterfront single-family homes that sold in the city last month. That's up from March's number of 342. And we're doing a little bit better than we were last year. Last year, 12 months ago in April of 2025, we sold 341. So just about 13 more than this time last year. If you go back 2 years ago to April of 2024, we had sold 356. So just a little bit better back then. But I like to kind of look at the first 4 months and try to gauge where our demand is at based on, compared to the last couple of years. You know, in the first 4 months of this year, we've sold a total of 1,148 of these properties. If you want to compare that to the first 4 months of the previous 2 years, back in 2025, last year, the first 4 months, we had sold 1,144. So we're just slightly outpacing that. It's basically flat from where it was last year. We've sold 4 more in the first 4 months this year. That just represents 0.3%. So if you want to look at it like demand, we are about on par in this category from where we were last year, and we're doing a little bit less than we were in 2024. By the first 4 months of 2024, we had sold 1,217, so just slightly less than 2024, but we're basically on par in this category. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that this category of property has a lot more finance buyers. The interest rates, at least compared to the last few years for mortgages right now, are still somewhat high compared to what we were seeing a few years ago when we were talking about 3% interest rates. I think the latest I saw right now, the average is somewhere around the low to mid 6s right now. So that's putting a little bit of pressure on buyers' affordability in this particular category, and I think that's really the only reason that we're not seeing a little bit stronger demand for this category this year versus last year, like we're seeing in a lot of the other categories that have a few more cash sales. So like Gulf access is way up this year, condos are up this year, single family homes were about dead even to where we were last year. But that's the total number of sales. Let's pop over and see what the total median price for those sales, those 354 sales were. Here's the median price for those sales. Again, monthly median price going back to January 2024. Let's take a look. Okay, April, we did a little bit better in April than we did in March. Ticked up, the median price was $340,000. That's up from March's number of $330,000. And you can see, we've had a really gradual decline, a really gradual price correction over the course of the last 2 years. If you want to look back 12 months ago, in April of 2025, the median price was $345,500. So we're down about $5,500 from where we were last year. That's only about 1.6%. And I think this is another indication of why this pricing seems to be very flat for the last 8 or 9 months so far. We've had a couple of dips, a couple of spikes like that, but overall, if you kind of average these out, we've been really, really flat in terms of pricing since about the middle of summer last year. And I think that's one of the indications that this particular market cycle is kind of flattening out. So we're in that sort of bottom period right now. It's going to take a few more months before we realize whether or not we're ticking back up again. Because again, you're going to have some little bit higher months, a little bit lower months, and you kind of have to average everything out. But I think the correction is much more clear if you go back 2 years ago, 24 months ago, to April of 2024. The median price for this category was $369,500. So over 2 years, we're down on average about $29,500, or about 8%. So I really think we got to get into the summer to kind of see where we're at on this. Again, the pricing, when you go through these market cycles, the pricing is the last thing that you notice kind of turn around. And usually by the time you've noticed it happening, you're 6 or so months into it. So this is kind of looking back a little bit. But I think the summer will confirm whether or not if we've bottomed out in this category or if we have a few more points of correction to go. Nothing really indicates to me that unless something broader economically happens, negatively, I don't think we'll see too much more softening, if any. If anything, I think it'll continue to be flat as we get into the summer, and then maybe the pricing will start to tick back up in the third or fourth quarter this year, or certainly next season, as long as the inventory numbers continue to go down. And let's take a look at the inventory numbers for this category. So again, this is the total number of actives that were on the market, active listings that were on the market at some point during the month. This doesn't mean that there are this many properties actively available right now, because some of those active listings, some of them sold, some of them expired, some of them came off the market completely, this, that, and the other. So just keep that in mind, that this is the number that you're talking about. It's any active listing that was on the market at one point or another during the month is where they're getting these numbers here. But take a look at this graph again, going back to January 2024. You can see that, our inventory spikes, we always have an inventory spike every year, starting in usually November or December. As we get into the main buying season down here in Southwest Florida of the first 3 to 6 months of the year, we always see inventory kind of tick up, with people anticipating that we're going to have some more buyers in the market. We didn't really see much of a spike at all this year as we headed into that main season. Certainly nothing compared to last year. Last year we had a really big spike in inventory as we got into November and December and January, and it really didn't materialize this year. So take a look at these numbers. So there was a total of 2,082 of these properties on the market at some point during April, and that's down from March's number of 2,143. But look how much inventory we've taken off the markets in the last 12 months. You go back to April of 2025, and the total number of properties that were on the market at some point that month was 2,622. So we've taken a net number of properties off the market of 540, and that represents a decline in overall inventory of 21% just in the last 12 months. And again, that includes the spike, the little bit of a bump that we got going into season, because it was certainly a heck of a lot lower than that back in December. And we've already started to take that inventory off the market again as we head towards the end of season and into the slower summer months. So I think this is a pretty remarkable thing. And the other categories, you're seeing a much more dramatic decrease in inventory in the other categories. So again, I think this particular category is just lagging behind a little bit from things like Gulf Access. But even if you go back 2 years ago, April 2024, the number here, the total actives on the market back then were 2,437. So we're still down 355 properties from where we were in April of 2024. That represents a decrease in inventory, a net decrease in inventory of 15%. So we're right now in the middle of the middle of the high point of our main season right now, when inventory is usually at its highest. We are below where we were last July. So I think that's pretty telling. And we always get a dip in inventory in just about any market cycle, no matter what, if it's a buyer's market or seller's market, the inventory comes down almost every summer. And in 2024, that summer drop was 10.5%, and last year it was 25.5%. So let's say we get another 15% drop in this summer's inventory between now and the summer. That's going to get us to basically 1,800 properties on the market. It's going to get us well under 2,000 properties on the market, and I think that's just a really, really good sign that this particular market cycle, once again, is sort of bottoming out. As we continue to take inventory off the market, as sales numbers tend to be relatively strong, obviously we're going to see that pricing continue to be flat and eventually kind of turn back in the other direction. So all the trends are heading into this particular market cycle bottoming out and turning back around, and eventually we're going to be back into a seller's market sooner than later. I wouldn't count on pricing going up anytime soon, but if anything, it'll stay relatively flat, and then those numbers of the number of active listings that are out there will continue to drop, which will create some tightening on the buyers out there that are looking for properties. You're going to have fewer properties out there on the market to choose from. But that wraps up the numbers for the off-water single-family home market. Let's jump over and take a look at condos and townhomes real quick, and then we'll finish some things up with some advice for some buyers as well as some advice for sellers in the current Cape Coral real estate market. All right, condos and townhomes in the city of Cape Coral. I always lump this category together, so this is basically anything that's not a single-family home. Condos, townhomes, attached villas, things like that. Whether they're on the water, off the water, everything is together in this category as I'm covering it today, just because we don't really have a big segment of our market is in the way of condos and townhomes, so we got to keep the sample sizes as large as possible. So this includes everything that's a condo and townhome, basically anything that's not a single-family home and not, multifamily or something like that. But let's start out with the total number of sales. This particular category, very much like golf access homes, is a very seasonal category. We saw a lot more of these properties, these condos and townhomes, in the first 6 months of the year compared to the last half of the year. So it's no surprise, usually March, April, and May are 3 biggest months for this particular category. So we're right in the middle of high season for condos and townhomes right now. So let's take a look at the total number of sales. Condos have been doing a little bit better this season, especially compared to the last couple of seasons, but sold 69 total condos and townhomes last month in the month of April. That's down a little bit from March. We'd sold 72. March was a really great month for this category. And, we're doing, again, pretty well compared to the last couple of years. Last year, condos and townhomes were it was a little bit rough. The demand was a little bit down still for condos and townhomes in 2025. And last April, we only sold 52. So we've sold 17 more. And when you're only talking about 69 properties, 17 is a big number to jump up from last year. And even if you go back 2 years ago to April of 2024, we had sold 67 that particular month. But let's look at the first 4 months of the year so far. In fact, I'll compare this going back all the way to 2023. Pricing kind of topped out at in 2023. Single-family homes, the pricing kind of topped out in 2022. But for whatever reason, the pricing for condos peaked out in 2023, and then we've been softening, and the pricing has been coming down ever since. But in the first 4 months of 2023, we'd sold 200 condos. In the first 4 months of 2024, we sold 210 condos. Last year, that number dipped down. First 4 months of 2025, we had sold 183 condos. This year so far, in the first 4 months of 2026, we've sold 236 condos and townhomes in the city of Cape Coral. And you compare that to last year when we only sold 183 during those first 4 months. We've sold 53 more this year. And if you want to look at that like demand, that means we've had an increase in condo and townhome demand of 29% compared to the first 4 months of last year. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that a lot of these condo sellers have finally come to terms with they needed to price their property pretty aggressively in order to compete in this market. If you're trying to sell a condo or townhome right now, you got to price that pretty aggressively to get some action on it, just because we still have a pretty healthy amount of active listings out there on the market. And even though the buying demand is up this year, it's certainly nowhere near where it needs to be to kind of equalize the number of properties that are on the market. But before we get into the inventory, let's look at the median price for those, because I think this is one of the main reasons that we're selling a few more this year compared to last year. Here's the price chart for monthly median price for condos and townhomes going all the way back to January 2024. Median price for condos and townhomes in the city last month was $215,000. That's up very slightly from March's number of $212,500. And you compare that to the last couple of years, when we don't have a big sample size, we're only talking about 40 or 50 or 60 properties a month. As you can imagine, if a few more waterfront condos or a few more, $1 million condos in Tarpon Point sell in any given month, that's going to drag the median price up a little bit. So you kind of have to average everything out. But let's just look at the last couple of years in terms of the month of April. Last April in 2025, the median condo price was $230,500. And back in April of 2024, that number was $270,000. But let's kind of try to average these out. We'll take the first 4 months of the year over the last few years and average those median prices out. The first 4 months of 2024, the average median price for those 4 months was $265,000, $250,000. Last year, in the first 4 months of the year, those median prices averaged out to $236,000, $250,000. And the first 4 months of this year, those median prices average out to $209,375. So I think that's a little better indication of where the kind of market is. That eliminates some of that fluctuation. So if we compare all those numbers together, that means on average right now in the last 12 months, the average condo price has come down $23,750 or 10% in the last 12 months. And you look back 24 months back to the first quarter of, or the first 4 months of 2024, the average condo price has come down since then $55,875 or 21.1% just in 2 years. So by far, condos have corrected more than any other category that we have here in the city of Cape Coral. Again, I think that's just one of the main drivers for that is the condo fees have certainly gone up, especially from 24 to 25, 2024 to 2025. We saw the HOA, monthly HOA fees go up significantly as everybody was kind of recovering and rebuilding their reserves from the hurricanes that we had. And certainly some of the new requirements that especially the the mid-rise and high-rise condos are having to do now. They're having to set a certain amount of reserves aside to do milestone inspections and have money there ready to go if they need to do any structural repairs in the wake of that horrible Surfside condo building collapse that we saw a few years ago. They changed the rules, and as a result, it's putting a little more financial pressure on some of the condo buildings that are 3 stories and above. So I think that's one of the big drivers with it. And then that's kind of forced some of the sellers out there to sell because they can no longer afford. As you can imagine, condos and townhomes, a lot of the folks that live there are maybe retirees. They're on a fixed income. So if you jack those fees up on them a lot, they can no longer afford that. They've got to sell. Now they're forced sellers, and the demand is kind of reduced compared to where it was a few years ago. So that's one of the main drivers for why the pricing has corrected so much in this particular category compared to the other ones like golf access and single-family homes. We've certainly seen a larger decrease in overall pricing for condos and townhomes versus those other categories. So still a great time to be a condo buyer right now. You can get a great deal. I'm shopping for some folks right now for a golf access condo, and the pricing that you're able to get and what you're able to get for that is really incredible right now, especially for folks that maybe are first-time home buyers. Maybe you can't afford to go into a single-family home. Take a look at those condos. In spite of the fees being up a little bit higher, they usually cover quite a few things that you would be paying for otherwise. And it's a good way to kind of get yourself into this real estate market and experience some of that inevitable upside that we're going to have here in Southwest Florida in the coming years. But that wraps up the pricing. Let's take a look at the inventory. Again, inventory is, one of the main drivers of why we've seen such a correction in this category. But here's the chart for the total number of active listings on the market at some point each month. This goes back to January 2024. We had a total of 475 condos on the market at some point during April. And that's down from March. March, we had 497. And we had a little bit bigger seasonal spike in this category compared to a lot of the other categories that we have here in Cape Coral, but it still was pretty muted compared to last year. We had a big run up last year, and that's, I think, one of the reasons why we saw that 10% price reduction in the course of the last 12 months. But the inventory has already started coming down. We peaked out in February, and we've already started to drop those number of active listings on the market. But let's just compare the last couple of years. In April of 2025, again, in April 2026, we had 475 condos on the market. April 2025, we had 560. So we've taken 85 net properties off the market in the last 12 months. Represents an inventory reduction of 15.2% in the last 12 months. And even when you go back to 2024, April 2024, we had over 500. We had 515 on the market back then. So we've still taken a net 40 off the market from 2 years ago, and that represents a reduction of about 7.8%. So, we're selling 50 to 70 condos a month right now in the high season. That number will drop off as we get into the slower summer months. And, compared to the total number that are still available out there, I think we have some ways to go to get those inventory levels down to where they kind of need to be to kind of equal out. So it remains to be seen. I think condos and townhomes, if there's one category that we have right now that hasn't quite bottomed out, it would be condos and townhomes. I'm not totally certain about that, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw another few points of correction from the condo market before things kind of flatten off and turn around. They may stay flat through the summer, especially if a huge number of condos come off the market between now and, say, July. We'll just have to see. So check back here every month and take a look at what the condo market is doing. But that wraps things up for condos and townhomes. And that wraps things up for the two categories I was covering on this particular video. Again, if you're interested in the other categories like the waterfront stuff, I've done a separate video for that. The link is down in the description, or you can go to the channel and take a look at those. They're covering Gulf access and freshwater canal properties, so make sure you catch those. And then I did yet another video, a third video, on the broader overall residential real estate market that also includes vacant land. But these are the two categories I was covering on this particular video. So let's go ahead and get into some advice for current buyers and current sellers in the Cape Coral real estate market. All right, so if you're a current buyer in the Cape Coral real estate market, or you're anticipating being a buyer in this real estate market in the near future, what is my advice to you? What do you need to be paying attention to based on 20 years of being a full-time real estate broker here? I've seen every manner of real estate market in this business, in this location, and I can tell you, just based on everything, I mean, you've been in the driver's seat as a buyer for a number of years right now, and we've seen pricing decrease even in the face of higher inflation numbers every year. Usually real estate kind of tends to keep up with inflation. So if you stack those inflation numbers on top of the price reductions that we've seen since 2022 when the market peaked out, I think we've corrected probably every bit of 30% in some categories, maybe even more than that in places like condos. But we're starting to see all of the trends indicate that we're in a flattening out. We've bottomed out in this particular market cycle. We've had 8 or 9 or 10 months of pricing that has been flat. It's bumped up and down a little bit, but there's been no clear trend for the last 8, 9, 10 months. Whereas in the years preceding that, especially in 2024 and 2025, for at least for the first half of the year of 2025, we had saw some consistent trends going in the downward direction on pricing. So pricing had some down pressure, and now we've seen inventory numbers, depending on the category, come down in excess of 30% just in the last 12 months. And we're heading into the time of year where those inventory numbers were going to be falling even more. And I was even talking to somebody the other day that was looking for a Gulf access home, and she called me and she said, you know what? I've been looking at these properties for the last 12 months, and it just seems like everything on the market has been picked over right now. I'm not seeing the number of available properties that I was seeing 12 months ago, and I think that's completely an indication of the inventory numbers coming down as much as they have. I mean, Gulf access has come down in excess of 30% from where it was 12 months ago, and on the other side of that, buying demand has been up in excess of 34% for Gulf access homes in the last for this year compared to last year. So you're seeing demand go up, you're seeing inventory come down. Those trends cannot continue without the market bottoming out and turning in the other direction. So pricing's been flat 8, 9, 10 months, and we're going to be 6 or 8 months into an increasing market before we fully realize that we are in an increasing market. So my advice to you would be, if you're looking in the near future, if you could do something in the next 6 months, I would definitely encourage you to do so. If you miss the bottom of the market, that's not really a huge deal. I don't anticipate pricing to go up very, very very, very rapidly. I think if anything, it'll start to go up very gradually. And so if you miss that bottom of the market and you pay 2 or 3% more because you bought next year versus 6 months from now, I don't necessarily think you're in a bad position, because I think this overall area is extremely healthy. We're going to add another 100,000 residents between now and 2040 in the city of Cape Coral. And so that demand is going to always be there. People want the waterfront, they want the beautiful sunshine, they want the great weather in the winter down here. And so there's going to be consistent demand for people moving to this area for the foreseeable future. And I think the real estate market's future looks very, very bright in that regard. So don't worry about that too much if you're going to miss that bottom. But just be aware that we are experiencing the bottom right now, and pricing has been very, very flat. And as inventory continues to come off the market, you're going to have fewer properties to choose from out there, and eventually you're going to start to see these prices increase. We're already seeing, I couldn't tell you, I mean, in the last month, I would say I've been in 4 situations of multiple offer scenarios, either with my listings or with buyers that I'm representing, where we've gone to offer on a property and there's been 2 or 3 other offers on it. I haven't seen that really since 2023, maybe 2022. So it's there. The anecdotes are here, and they are backing up what the data suggests, which is this market's bottoming out, the inventory has come down, and eventually we're going to start to see a lot more competition for buyers out there, especially compared to where it was last year when you were kind of in the driver's seat and there was a million properties on the market. So my advice to you as a buyer is, if you're able to pull the trigger sooner than later, I think you're going to be in a better position. Don't let that keep you up at night. If you're planning on waiting 18 months or something like that, I still think if you catch it on the upside, you're going to be okay in the long term. And especially if you're pretending to buy something and keep it for 5 or 6 years. I mean, just as strictly as an investment, it's going to be a great decision, just because the total number of people that are coming down here, we're seeing more and more of them every year. So we got a great future here, and if I can help you with anything, if you are a buyer in the current Cape Coral real estate market, get a hold of me. Shoot me a call, shoot me a text, shoot me an email, whatever it takes. I always love hearing from your folks, but I can kind of take the information that you give me in terms of what you're looking for and the locations that you're looking for and all that kind of stuff, and kind of give you some advice in terms of what direction you need to be facing and kind of what to look out for. A lot of nuances in this real estate market, especially for buyers right now, so I'm happy to help you out. If I can help you with anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Call, text, email me anytime. But that's my advice for buyers. You're looking, it's looking like the market's bottoming out right now. So your best time to buy is probably going to be in the next 6 months, maybe the next 8, 12 months. But eventually it's going to start going back up again, and there are going to be fewer properties on the market, and the pricing is going to be a little bit north of where it is right now. Okay, if you're a seller in the Cape Coral real estate market, what is my advice to you? What do you need to be paying attention to based on the 20 years that I've been a full-time real estate broker here in the city of Cape Coral? Well, I've seen all sorts of weird real estate markets, and it's certainly been a tough real estate market for sellers for the last few years, especially last year. Last year was just really, really tough to be a seller, especially in spring of 2025 when those inventory numbers were out of control. The buyer demand was down from 2024 and 2023. We've really turned that around, and if you're a seller in this real estate market, that's exactly what you want to see. And if you had asked me 6 months ago if we were going to have the inventory numbers and the increase in overall sales numbers that we're seeing right now, I probably wouldn't have believed it. It's been shockingly high, both on the in terms of the more number of properties that we're selling this year versus last year, and so much less inventory. So much inventory's come off the market in the last 12 months. So you've got light at the end of the tunnel as a seller, and that's the things that you want to see are happening right now. The inventory's coming down, demand is up, and as a result, pricing across almost all categories has been flat for 8 or 9 or 10 months. And so that really points to the sign that this particular market cycle is bottoming out, and in the absence of something crazy macroeconomically that happens and we go into a massive recession where people are getting laid off right and left and the stock market's gone down and all that kind of stuff, I think all signs point to this market recovery starting to happen, and we're going to turn back into a seller's market before too long. Right now we're pretty close to equilibrium, and that's why that pricing has kind of flattened out in the last 8 or 9 months. But I think we're going to be 6 or 8 months into this recovery before we realize that we're back into an increasing market. Just anecdotally, I'm seeing a lot of multiple offer situations. In the last month, I've seen 4 of them, both on the buyer side and the seller side, and I really hadn't seen any since maybe 2023. So signs like that are another indication that this particular market cycle is turning around. We've bottomed out, and eventually we're going to start to see those prices start to rise again as we get more of that inventory off the market. Still got a little bit of work to do on the inventory front, but I think a lot of that work is going to happen this summer as more and more of those properties come off the market, and especially if we have a really strong summer. Summer's traditionally the slow time of the year for this real estate market, but if we have a really strong summer compared to the last few summers, I think that market's going to turn around even quicker. So as a seller, if you're able to sell, if you need to sell right now, just make sure you're pricing your property right. You got to price that property right more than anything other. And if you do all the things right, you could end up with those multiple offer situations like I've seen in the last month or two. And but you got to price your property right. That property has to be looking tip top. But the good news is there are vastly fewer properties on the market now, depending on the category, than there were this time last year. So if you're a seller in the current real estate market, give me a call, shoot me a text, shoot me an email. I'd love to hear about your property. You can send me that address, tell me a little bit about it, and I can give you kind of an idea of where you need to price that thing to sell it in the current Cape Coral real estate market. I don't think there's going to be a huge benefit to waiting until next year. If the pricing does start to go back up, I think it's going to be very, very gradual. Unless we just have the inventory just falls off a cliff all of a sudden and the demand stays up. But I think it's going to be a very slow turnaround. So if you wait 12 months, maybe you get another 0.2% out of your property than you're getting this year, but it's not like it's going to be worth 10% more next year. If anything, the inventory numbers will continue to go down, and it'll be a better selling environment for sellers then. But it really just depends on what happens this summer and how much inventory comes off the market and then comes back starting at the beginning of next year. But all signs are pointing to this particular market cycle turning around, and that's great news for sellers. And you've kind of had to cry yourself to sleep every night for the last few years if you are a seller in this real estate market. But things are looking up now. And if you are a seller in the near future, I would love to hear from you. Call, text, or email me anytime. But that's my advice for sellers. For the first time in a long time, things are starting to look pretty good, and there's some light at the end of this tunnel of this real estate market. So stay tuned. All right, let's wrap this up. Let's put a bow on it, give you a nice little summary of what's going on in the Cape Coral real estate market if you didn't want to wade through all of those nitty-gritty details. Well, what's happening in the real estate market right now is inventory is cratering. Demand is up significantly, especially in categories like golf access homes. We're seeing a ton more golf access home sales this year versus last year, and the inventory is significantly less than it was last year. Those two things together point to this particular market cycle turning around. The pricing across almost all categories has been very, very flat in the last 8 or 9 months. We haven't really seen a decrease or an increase in pricing since basically the middle of summer last year. And I think that's a really great sign for sellers that this particular market cycle is bottoming out. If you're a buyer in this Cape Coral real estate market, you're noticing that if you've been waiting for that bottom to occur, all signs are pointing to that we're at the bottom at this very moment, and we're probably going to get 6 or 8 months into this before we realize we're in an increasing market. So a lot depends on what happens this summer and in the remaining couple months here of our high season. If our demand continues to be strong into season, and we see a pretty significant decrease in inventory, as we probably will as we head into the slower summer months, I think that's going to help turn things around pretty quickly. And it's not like we're going to wait a year and the prices are going to be 10% more than they are now. If anything, it might be a 1 or 2% at the most, or it might still be flat heading into the later months of this particular year. So it's not something that's going to happen really quickly. If you're a buyer and you have to wait until this time next year to buy something, you're not going to be in that bad of a shape. If you're a seller and you're planning on waiting 12 months because you're going to get so much more money for your property, that's not really the case either. So the good news for sellers is there's a lot fewer properties on the market now, and you don't have to compete with as many sellers out there, but you still need to price your property right. You still have to have it looking tip top. And if you do all those things correctly, we're seeing for the first time in a long time multiple offer situations. I haven't seen stuff like that since like 2023, and I've been involved in 4 or 5 of those scenarios just in the last month or two. So we're starting to see things really indicate that we're making this turnaround here for this real estate market. But I think it's a very strong sign. We're still anticipating another 100,000 residents moving to the city of Cape Coral by 2040 here. So that long-term outlook for this particular area of Southwest Florida is very, very bright. So no matter if you are a buyer and you get in now or you get in 12 or 18 months from now, I think long term you're going to be looking really, really good from an investment standpoint, because we're still one of the most affordable areas in South Florida. Certainly nothing compared to with the pricing and everything that's over there on the East Coast. I mean, especially the waterfront real estate over on the East Coast is just exorbitant. And even if you go down to Bonita Springs or Naples, waterfront real estate prices are crazy compared to what they are here. So you can still get a heck of a lot of property for a vastly less sum of money than you can in a lot of the other areas of Florida. And I think I think more and more people are finding that out every day, and which is why we're seeing such an influx of folks from other areas of the country moving here. But that pretty much wraps it up for the Cape Coral Real Estate Market Report for May of 2026. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, if you got something out of it, do me a favor, hit the like button on your way out. Make sure you're subscribed if you haven't subscribed. And if I can do anything for you, either buying or selling a property here anywhere in Southwest Florida, doesn't have to be Cape Coral, give me a call, shoot me a text, shoot me an email. Contact information's right there on the screen. And remember, I do these videos every single month. These are in addition to the weekly videos I put out, where I'm just giving you some really good, useful information. I try to create a lot of value for you folks, because I know if I can do that, more of you will call me and allow me to help you navigate this complex real estate market, whether you are a buyer or a seller. But thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time, and I will see you on the next video in a few short days.
Like and subscribe. Just kidding.